President Biden, more than any other president that I can recall, has talked over and over again about being pro-union. The time for talk is over. The time for action is now.
Bernie Sanders is now publicly challenging President Joe Biden to keep his promise to workers, specifically as it pertains to union-busting companies. Now, I will get to this video of Bernie's speech on the floor. It is fantastic. I'll also, later on in this video, show you something else that Biden may be doing in terms of another promise that he made during the campaign that he now, according to sources, is actually seriously considering, and it's a great thing. So we'll get to more on that in a bit here. But first, on Bernie's challenge and his letter and what he said in this speech. As Politico reported here, the Vermont senator sent Biden a Tuesday letter obtained by Politico asking the president to cut off federal contracts to Amazon until the massive company stops what he calls its illegal anti-union activity. As the Senate Budget Committee chair, Sanders will also hold a hearing next week dedicated to calculating how many federal contracts go to companies that are fighting back against unionization efforts with a focus on Amazon. Now, I'll get to this video in a second here. It's just, I have to comment quickly. It is hilarious that Politico has to put this in quotes, in Bernie's words, what he calls illegal anti-union activity. It's fine to quote him and then say, and they have done these things, as it's been reported, as it's out in the public, but instead they just say, oh, it's his words. He calls it illegal anti-union activity, but it's been ruled illegal that Amazon has done these things. But they have to try and force this neutrality into this piece instead of actually acknowledging objective reality about what Amazon has done. And in the speech, Bernie's speech is like 20 minutes long, so I'm going to show you bits and pieces of it. But in this speech, he goes into some of what Amazon has done. So in terms of their union busting, they're currently refusing to accept the results of the union election, the union vote that just took place in Staten Island, where that organizing committee won their vote to unionize. Amazon right now is currently appealing that to try and stall the process, even though they lost fair and square. Amazon's also been penalized more than $75 million for breaking discrimination and labor laws. Again, this isn't Bernie Sanders saying illegal anti-union activity. This is the NLRB saying this. The NLRB is also currently suing Amazon over firing a worker for organizing a union. And there are currently 59 unfair labor cases against Amazon that are pending at the NLRB. And Amazon itself has a 150% turnover rate, showing you that people that work in these warehouses are worked to the bone and then end up leaving and replaced by somebody else because of how terrible the conditions there are. Now, this is the letter. I'm not going to read through this because Bernie references part of this in the speech, but this is the letter that Bernie sent to Joe Biden. I will link to this below the video if you want to read through it. But here is a part of the speech where Bernie straight up challenges Biden to do what he promised.
And that is why this morning I sent a letter to President Biden urging him to sign an executive order to prohibit companies like Amazon that have violated labor laws from receiving federal contracts paid for by the taxpayers of America. And let me quote directly from the letter. Quote, Dear President Biden, last September, I was delighted to hear you state that you intend to be the most pro-union president leading the most pro-union administration in American history. As you will recall, Mr. President, during the presidential campaign, you promised to, and I quote here, institute a multi-year federal debarment for all employers who illegally opposed unions, and to, quote, ensure federal contracts only go to employers who sign neutrality agreements committing not to run anti-union campaigns, end of quote. That's what President Biden said as a candidate for president. And then I say in my letter, that campaign promise was exactly right. Today, I am asking you to fulfill that promise. As you may know, Amazon, one of the largest, the most profitable corporations in America, is the poster child as to why this anti-union busting executive order is needed now more than ever. President Biden, more than any other president that I can recall, has talked over and over again about being pro-union. Therefore, it is my view that the time for talk is over. The time for action is now. Taxpayer dollars should not go to companies like Amazon and multi-billionaires like Jeff Bezos, who repeatedly break the law. No government, not the federal government, not the state government, and not the city government, should be handing out corporate welfare to union busters and labor law violators. So today I say to President Biden, you promised to prevent union busters like Amazon from receiving lucrative contracts from the federal government. Keep that promise.
So you notice here a bit of a shift in tone from Bernie Sanders toward Joe Biden. For a while there, it appeared he was trying to play the inside game, trying to stay as close to Biden as possible to try and influence him on some of these issues. And now it's getting to the point where Bernie is seeing that inside game that he's played hasn't really helped all that much. I mean, maybe it's kept these issues within Biden's, purview and considering some of them, but in terms of actual action, hasn't done a lot. So now Bernie is coming out forcefully and saying, you know what, you made this promise, it's time to get this done. And in case there was any confusion about what he was saying there, asked if Biden has fallen short in his union support thus far as president, Sanders said bluntly in an interview, yes, he has. So Bernie is not hiding the fact that Biden has absolutely been a disappointment, and especially as it pertains to issues of, workers' rights. Now, also, employees at Amazon facilities sustained injuries at more than twice the rate of workers at other facilities in 2021, according to a Strategic Organizing Center analysis of Occupational Safety and Health Administration data. That year, Amazon employed 1/3 of all warehouse workers in the U.S., but accounted for nearly half of all injuries in the sector, showing you again how Amazon is uniquely terrible in their treatment of workers. Now, will something come of this before I get to the next piece here in terms of what Biden has promised and may deliver on? I don't know. This pressure, I think, helps to keep this topic, in the headlines. You have political covering it, so that's something. I mean, this is what people in Washington care about, so this is getting coverage. I'm sure Biden has seen the letter, has seen this coverage, understands what he promised, what he hasn't delivered on. He doesn't need Congress to do this. He can do this himself. So will he deliver? We have to wait and see. As this pressure mounts, Bernie's going to do more in terms of this heightened pressure on Amazon as well. So having this, connected approach here, connecting the union busting of Amazon and its anti-labor practices to Biden's promise during the campaign, and so far his inability to deliver on that promise, I think helps to really heighten this issue, potentially leading to something being done here. But, it's Joe Biden, so I don't expect a whole lot. That said, also worth pointing out here, this is the other piece that I wanted to share briefly that is not related to this, but it's related to the pressure on Biden. So earlier this month, Bernie and nearly 100 other lawmakers urged Biden administration to extend the payment pause and cancel student debt. So the payment pause is extended till August 31st, I believe. Cancel student debt. This has been brought up again and again by people like Bernie, progressives, myself, as something Biden promised during the campaign. He said he would cancel $10,000 student debt for each debt holder. He can do that through executive order. So far has not done that. But apparently now he is telling people behind the scenes, including the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, that he's looking at forgiving some federal student loan debt. And in the details, they go on to say how one of the lawmakers brought up how they want to see at least $10,000 canceled, and they're open, of course, to a lot more. And Biden responded basically saying, oh, I have some good news to deliver you on that front. So we're going to have to see if Biden actually fulfills this other campaign promise that he made that I think would absolutely help his approval ratings and also help Democrats before the midterms if he is to deliver on this. But whether it's this, whether it's the anti-union activity from Amazon and Biden's ability to do something about that, he has to deliver on just what he promised. Like it's not like Bernie's coming out here and asking Biden to implement Medicare for all when Biden didn't, promise that. All Bernie is saying, all others are saying is do what you promised in the campaign. The bare minimum that wasn't enough to begin with, but was something. At the very least, do that. If he's able to do anything here, and again, these are through executive orders, he can do this himself. He doesn't need, Joe Manchin to pass any of this. He should get this done for just out of purely selfish reasons. Because Biden clearly doesn't care all that much about the working class, doesn't care all that much about actually helping anybody. He talks a big game, but when it comes to actually delivering, he doesn't deliver. So from a purely selfish perspective, for your own approval rating, for people to like you, do this. It's the bare minimum. Will he? Is a different question because, of course, there are other interests at play that pressure Biden behind the scenes. Corporate interests, of course, have a massive voice, massive pull behind the scenes on Biden and Democrats at large. But ultimately, if Biden does do any of this, it will help him incredibly, help him and help the Democratic Party.